Standing Policy Committee for Wednesday, April the 21st, 2021. We'll begin with the reconciliation statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I'll now ask our City Clerk, Ms. Hilford, to do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Kaufman. I'm not sure if I see him now. Councillor Kaufman. Okay. Councillor Croson.
Here.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Acting Mayor Hagan.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Here.
Mayor Spearman.
Present.
And I'm going to call for Councillor Kaufman again. Okay, we have 8 of the 9. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Just before we begin today, I just want to provide some context and some clarification. There's some confusion in the community about what's happening at these meetings. Today's presentations are for information purposes only. No decisions are being made today. When we pass motions, we're passing motions to accept the information. The Economic SPC will meet during the week of May the 10th to deliberate the capital improvement program projects, and those decisions will be forwarded to City Council's consideration at the May 18th City Council meeting. When that meeting occurs, the projects will be approved. Any projects that are recommended and brought forward at that City Council meeting. I want to stress that we have limited funding this year. We won't be funding extraordinary items because there is only limited funding available and many projects to consider. So this will be quite a lean year. We certainly welcome our public support on the proposed projects. So they're all listed on the city's website, and there is an opportunity for the public to engage. So you can link to the capital budget engagement site at https://getinvolvedlethbridge/2022-2023 capital budget. The site is open between April the 14th and April the 28th for public input. So please go on to our website. We certainly welcome input and engagement from the public, and look forward to a process. So just to emphasize, there are presentations today. Motions will be passed to accept the information. No decisions are being made today. Thank you.
Mayor Spearman.
Yes.
Councillor Carlson here. Thank you for that preamble and introduction. Appreciate. Just got a message from Councillor Kaufman. He's having issues logging in to Teams for some reason, so he'll try and join perhaps by phone. But I'm not sure if there's something we can do on our end, but he's having issues. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Very good. Okay, we'll start with the motions. I have a resolution moved by Vice Chair Carlson. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting held on Wednesday, April the 7th be approved, and the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I had a chance to review them. I didn't see any errors or omissions. I hope my colleagues had a moment to review them. If there's nothing further, I see no hands, and I'll just call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? I see none. Thank you. Okay, another resolution from Vice Chair Carlson, the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Economic Standing Policy Committee meeting for Wednesday, April the 21st be adopted as presented. Vice Chair Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Again, I think members of council have had an opportunity to review the agenda. Are any additions, Madam Clerk?
Vice Chair Carlson, there are no additions or revisions to the agenda that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless my colleagues have questions or comment, I will call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? There are none. Okay, we'll move forward with the presentations. I'm going to invite Mr. Darren Martins forward, the Chief Executive Officer of the Galt Museum, to present to us on the Galt Museum's capital plan.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman and fellow councillors, for this opportunity to talk to you about the River Valley Ridership Survey and Analysis. Back in 2018, Council approved in that CIP process Phase 1, which was the River Valley Accessibility Study, which looked at opportunities and potential solutions to connect the River Valley with the upper part of Lethbridge. And during that process, a number of solutions were provided. That publication, or that report, was published on January 23rd of 2019. And moving forward from that, it was decided that it would be important to conduct a ridership survey to assess the need and the want for citizens of Lethbridge and those who are visiting, if they in fact would engage and utilize some sort of conveyance to connect Lethbridge with the valley. At that time, in 2019, Phase 2 was requested to develop, and that is CIP D38. The ridership survey was to occur in 2020. However, with the global pandemic, it gave us an opportunity in which to review and think about how we might want to move that forward in the future. So before you today, Phase 2, the River Valley Ridership Survey Analysis, which is an amendment to D38, outlines what we would like to do with respect to looking at a ridership study, which would take place in 2022 and 2023. It would be one full year, and over the course of 156 days, which would include 2 summers and some weekends in between those 2 summers, we would look at having a branded vehicle that would connect Nikayuko, Casa, the Sag, the Galt with the River Valley, including Fort Whoop-Up and the Helen Schuler Nature Center. This project, we were looking at it, and in consultation with city staff, thought it would be better to, as opposed to doing a survey over 1 summer, look at 2 summers and some of the shoulder season in order to get more data and better data in order to help make a decision on if a funicular is appropriate to connect the city with the valley. This project is in alignment with Council's strategic directives of livable communities, people, places for all, and as part of our financial stewardship, making sure that we make the right decisions with the best possible data before we move forward. So, are there any other questions? Are there any questions? I'm here to answer them for you.
All right, so the request is for a study. Are there questions from council? So Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Martins, for the presentation. So just for my clarity, there were dollars approved to study the feasibility of a funicular last CIP, so 4 years ago. And this is additional dollars to that that's already been approved, but is being reallocated, hopefully, or possibly this CIP, to do a ridership study, so running a pilot project. Is that what that is?
That's correct.
Excellent, thank you. Further that, Mayor Spearman, if I can maybe through you to the city treasurer, and likely we have, but it's out of my memory, funded a pilot project for a transit project through a capital budget. Is that something that we're funding is allowable? I'm wondering if like gas tax or MSI, there's usually strings attached of what we can use it for. And so I'm wondering how a transit pilot project or ridership study, would that be applicable?
Mayor Spearman through to Councillor Carlson. I think I understand what you're asking, but if I don't answer your question, just let me know.
Okay.
So we typically have planning projects in our CIP. So I think this still fits. We would have to be a little bit cautious in terms of which dollars we allocated, but we would find specific funding like the pay-as-you-go community, which has the most flexibility in terms of funding a project if this was approved.
Excellent, right. I keep forgetting that we do have some pay-as-you-go available to us. How much pay-as-you-go community funding do we have available at this time?
It's typically about $3 million a year.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Martins, for the presentation. Just wondered if this is the project is it to have a like a transit bus, or is what type of a vehicle could be used other than a bus, or what's the intention?
Mayor Spearman, through you, it's not utilizing a City of Lethbridge bus. This would be a third-party bus that we would have branded, and it would travel between all of these different sites.
So it would actually be a bus?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this
Thank you.
in order to assess the viability of and usage of that kind of service.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from council? Councillor Carlson?
Sorry, thanks again, Mayor Spearman. Through you again to Mr. Martins, if I can. So this would be running over 2 summer and shoulder seasons. Is that what I think I heard you say?
Yes, it would start in the summer of 2022, and then during sort of peak, whether there was festivals or other city events or other institutional events that these different places were having, would be on weekends and then another summer.
Excellent, thank you. And it would be running between the facilities you've mentioned. I think it was Nikiyuko, SAG, et cetera, and would it be just running full time? And would there be any fee to hop on, hop off, or could anybody access this?
Mayor Spearman, through you, it would be a free of charge, and it would be basically just to see who would be interested in this. It would be very much that hop on, hop off during the summer months. We would be running it most likely between 11 and 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And then on the off-season weekends, probably 12 to 6, 7 p.m. when these institutions are open.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Councillor Croson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So I'm working to understand a bit of what you have planned here. Mr. Martins, would there be any consideration, because this is an exploration, I'm thinking if this is going to be used more by local people, going directly between these organizations may be very effective because you're going between them on a day But has there been given any consideration to hooking hotels? Because if a tourist is using this, they're going to have a different end place than than a resident of Lethbridge. So during your exploration, are you giving any thought to, if you get a different feedback from people, if this is approved, that you might change the exploration to see who's actually wanting to use this, if it's feasible at all?
Absolutely. Mayor Spearman, through you, we are very much interested in partnering with hotels and restaurants and Tourism Lethbridge, the downtown BRZ, to make this the most effective and efficient study that we possibly can, so that it is serving the greatest community.
So it can be, if it was approved, it could be modified on the go, even between the two summers, to get the best feedback possible.
Mayor Spearman, through you, yes, that's correct.
Right. Thank you.
Hey, any further questions from council? Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Mayor Spearman. I'm just wondering, I know Mr. Martin said that they weren't going to use LA Transit, but wouldn't that be a prime partnership opportunity to brand one of the smaller LA Transit buses with the logos of all the different organizations or destinations, as well as possible sponsors? Would that be possible to explore rather than have your own and your own driver? I mean, LA Transit already has a driver pool with drivers that are licensed, that are insured. Could you include that as part of your exploration? I'm just not seeing from my perspective why you'd want to create your own bus system when you could just use, and it's only going to be used in the summer. So I'm wondering if you'd be open to actually exploring that with Mr. Sanderson at LA Transit.
Mayor Spearman, through you, that was part, as I understand it from my predecessor, that was part of the early exploration that did happen, and the costs for utilizing City of Lethbridge Transit was significantly higher than with going with a third party. But if it's council's decision or recommendation that we explore that, we're happy to do that.
Right. I'm just saying that there's a new community services director. There's a new transit manager. The mindset might be a little bit different. The look at how you might use a bus temporarily versus having a dedicated full-time driver all year round. I mean, I'm just wondering if you can maybe look at that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Looks like Mr. Fox wants to speak.
Mr. Fox?
Yeah, through the chair, I would definitely be open to looking at that opportunity. You know, I think partnerships are something in the community that we do have to look at intently. So I'll talk with Tim later this week, and we'll get back in touch with the Gulf and Darren.
Thank you. Good. That appears to be all the questions. I'm going to thank Mr. Martins for his presentation. I think council has a good idea of what's being requested here. It looks like study, exploration, along with trial transit system. We fully understand the project being requested, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we have a resolution.
Maybe you should ask if anybody wants to speak. I see some people on Teams. I don't know if they want to speak to this item public.
Yeah, okay. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Okay, I see no one. Okay, I now have a resolution from Vice Chair Carlson. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the presentation and report as information. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Unless there's any other comment from my colleagues, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, there are no other comments or questions. Question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? It's received as information. Thank you. Unanimous.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Kaufman was able to join. I'm Not sure, but I think he is.
Councillor Kaufman, can you confirm that you're with us?
Yes, I am with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
I got my Ouija board out.
All right. Okay, the next item is Capital Improvement Program, Lethbridge Police Services Master Plan. Our presenter is Chief Medizadeh. I believe he's presenting electronically. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have Inspector Walper here as well in case any questions that need to be answered. You have the presentation before you. This is essentially the first time Lethbridge Police Service is engaging in this process. And the purpose of that is looking at what our long-term plan for policing this community is based on the growth and the needs and obviously different types of infrastructure and services that needs to be provided to the public, including the police. So we're looking at looking at the futuristic vision of what our needs going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years to provide a better concept of how we want to move forward. This submission was obviously given based on advice from the city to submit a procurement project plan to be considered for the capital improvement program. And as we move on, next slide, please. Basically, it's about to evaluate our resources, equipment, and infrastructure, and also provide the city with at least our department, and then eventually the city what the needs will be from that perspective. So we are showing better accountability and also making sure our efforts are aligned with the city's goals, strategic goals, and policies moving forward. Next slide, please. In the next slide is just some history based on the population in Lethbridge and increasing population. And when you look at the policing services as the population grows, new neighborhoods are standing, there is a need to provide the services to all the citizens, and that would certainly factor into how we are going to do that and what we need from the infrastructure perspective to serve our citizens better. Some of the comments in this next slide is the west side of Lethbridge, which has seen significant growth in population, and also we are seeing similar trends in other parts, but west side seems to be the part that's been really developed as more than other parts. And as we are growing the capacity of our existing future resources, we need to look at that to better serve this community. Next slide, please. So in an essence, we are looking at exploring a few different options through having a consultant looking at these options and coming up with some sort of a plan to the city, which is again long-term in its scope. One is obviously right now we have a centralized building that polices the whole community. Is there other options that we can have substations in other parts of the city for the citizens to have quicker access to their police service, and we can serve them better? There's also another need for training facility. With the provincial standard, there's constant demand on the department to have mandatory training in many different disciplines and areas, and how we can actually provide that based on the future needs and the lack of capacity in that area that we need to build on. So in light of the the plan and the asks, obviously, is about having a consultant to give us a needs assessment for our future and planning for that as we move forward. We're just trying to be fiscally responsible and also making sure that these projects, they are significant as far as the cost to the city and to the taxpayers. And if we have a plan and we know the future needs, is providing better information to the council as far as where the needs are and be able to better plan for it as we move into the future. So these are not brought up to the council for decision in the last minute. This hits different strategic goals of the city as aligned with those, such as accountable leadership and also financial stewardship and economic prosperity, and also it's aligned with people, places for all within that reports that you have before you. And it's also aligned with the policies, which talks about prosperous city, healthy and diverse city, a well-designed city, and an environmental responsible city. So I'm not going to go on and on because we have a limited time. I hope at least I've provided you some information on what this ask is about, and open to any questions that you have for us.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Again, my apologies. Apple devices and Teams don't always communicate, so thank you for your patience. Thank you very much, Chief Inspector Walper, for the presentation, for the information. Just on the slide that you identified issues with the current range, I do tend to agree with you that there is the potential of liability down there because more and more people are obviously in that area, using that area. Have you had conversation with the Fish and Game Association? They have a rather large property where if you are requiring some specialization, certainly that is something that could go on there, plus just general range opportunities there as well. Have you had a conversation with them about that?
I don't believe so. I have to check on that. Jason, are you aware of that?
We have had limited discussions with Fish and Game, and certainly they have always been very gracious in providing us opportunities to use their facility. Now, unfortunately, at certain times when the police service is required to train, then we are unable to access their facility, and that does constrain our abilities to do our mandatory training within the confines of what are expected provincially for the police service. And also the certain types of activities that are allowed at the Fish and Game range sometimes are a little different than what the policing environment requires us to train in. So it does handcuff us slightly on what types we can do. But we certainly have had discussions with them, and we have worked with them on certain occasions, and we have used their facility as well.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, the one issue that, and this has been constant even in my previous life, with the RCMP, trying to find places where we can actually ranges that are good for police work and the type of training that we need. Our training right now is significant on that front based on the model that we have and the mandatories that we need to. So sharing a range sometimes it's for a short term, it might be an option, but again, that's certainly not a long-term solution because there's always conflict with the schedules and also what we can do.
So under the current policy or the current operating model of the Fish and Game Association, access is a challenge, but that's something it sounds like you could work through. There is space in that particular location, considerable space for adding additional or private or secluded or whatever policing requirements you need there. And I see the advantage of greater interaction with the community. So I was just curious if you've probed that. So thank you, Mayor Spearman.
And I think Councillor Kaufman, to add to that, and that's part of, I guess, why the ask is for this police master plan, is so we can explore those opportunities that are out there and certainly engage them as well.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Question I have is about developing master plan and your statement about wanting to engage stakeholders. Do those stakeholders include the general public?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, obviously the stakeholders would include the members of the police service and our employees here, as well as city council and the corporation as a whole. It would also include the police commission, this was presented to police commission as well. And then certainly the biggest part of the stakeholder involvement would be the public. And what does the public need from the police in the coming years as far as access, resources, and ability to engage with the police? And so we, as a service, can provide that place of a positive police interaction with our community and explore those options as far as specifically, like the chief had commented, when it comes to access, providing services everywhere the citizens are, so that our citizens aren't having to travel to a centralized location to receive certain types of police services. And hopefully this will give us an opportunity to be where our citizens are, engage them in their communities, not just in our building.
one comment I want to add to that is obviously pandemic has really opened our eyes. If we had more locations in this city for citizens to come to us, it would really eliminate a lot of the wait time and what they have when they're lined up outside to have access, etc. So again, all these events that are happening today, I think, are really significant as far as planning for the future, so we can better serve the community.
So, okay, so I just want to clarify then the general public would have an important role in the development of this plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and sorry, forgive me, my computer froze, so I had to switch computers. I'm on my iPad now, so forgive me if my questions were asked or if you answered them in your presentation. I was struggling there for a bit. Kind of follows up on Councillor Miyashiro's question around the stakeholders, and I'm assuming this is early days, and the consultant will have a lot of input on how this rolls out and is put together. Is it envisioned or contemplated that there'll be a steering committee guiding this work?
That's certainly once we get approval for a consultant, certainly that's an option that can be explored. Absolutely, it's all about coming up with a plan as well as a master plan how we move forward, and if a steering committee needs to be involved. But from my perspective, too, all these things obviously go through the commission and the council eventually as far as moving forward. So certainly a committee like that would certainly help as well if that's what's warranted.
Excellent. Thanks. And I appreciate hearing that, because I think it's one of the questions that I was following up on is the stakeholder list. It's hard to keep continually going out and connecting to groups, but if you have representatives from different groups, the general public, council, commission, as a steering committee, it makes it a bit easier. So I'm glad you're open to that. And I think, and sorry, my entire presentation shut down. I'm trying to reopen it. So I believe in the presentation it said this will inform strategic plan and plannings going forward. Can you send us a link to the current strategic plan for LPS? The link that I've got to it is broken, so I couldn't review the previous one. I think it was the 2019-2022, but I couldn't find it on the website this morning, and the only link I found was broken. So if I could see that, that'd be awesome. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My questions are, is this primarily capital, or is it also operating expenditures as well? I'm thinking of clearly things like shooting ranges and physical locations in West Lethbridge are capital perhaps. Things like body-worn cameras, not sure if they're capital or if they'd be an operating type of expense. What would this study consider?
I think it studies both those components from my perspective, both capital and operating expenses.
Okay, both. Okay, thank you. How did you come up with the quote of $320,000? Did somebody quote that number?
Yes, that was in consultation with the city and the going rate on different consulting fees, etc. So that was certainly provided to us by the city.
Okay, and maybe I missed it, but I'd like some clarification. When would this study be concluded if it's approved?
The sooner the better. From my perspective, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at setting up, obviously, our next cycle of strategic planning in 2022. And if we can have something like this done and completed, we can certainly factor some of these into moving forward into that 4-year strategic priority plan and also moving on past that. But again, it all depends on the timing and approval of the project and when we can get the report.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from council? I see none at this time. I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I now have a resolution from Vice Chair Carlson. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation from Lethbridge Police Services as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Again, I'll ask if there's any comment or questions by my colleagues, and if there's none, I will call for the vote.
I see none.
Okay, call the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we have received this presentation as information. Okay, I'd now like to invite Ms. Tara Plato, the CEO of Lethbridge Public Library, to present to us on the Lethbridge Public Library CIP projects, and this will be an electronic presentation. Welcome, Ms. Plato. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, members of council. I believe that my board chair is also on the line, and so he's available to answer questions at the end. So we do have a PowerPoint that I think is going to be brought up for me.
It's on the screen now.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you today Lethbridge Public Library's 2 CIP projects for your consideration. The first one is the Lethbridge Public Library.
Chair of the Public Library
is now joining.
Sounds like Craig just joined us. Sorry about that.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
The first project is the Lethbridge Public Library Master Plan. This project addresses long-term planning needs for public library services in Lethbridge. A needs assessment and facilities strategic direction study was completed in 2005 for the library. We know that in the 16 years since then that our community has changed dramatically. Some of the conclusions included in that document were quickly outdated, including estimated population growth on the west side of the city. This project will provide an updated needs assessment and facilities plan related to public library service needs for Lethbridge so that future facilities planning can occur based on contemporary community needs. Key aspects to be included in the plan are criteria for identification of preferred investment in branch locations, such as using socioeconomic factors and relationships to city planning documents, and planning for potential alternatives to capital investments in neighborhoods, such as alternative service delivery, co-location, and leased space possibilities. Increasing concerns.
I was watching the presentation on your link site, so you don't need to film. Thank you.
Craig, I think you just need to mute yourself.
Yep.
So increasing concerns expressed from customer and community in regards to access and perceptions of safety at the main branch indicate a need to continue exploring how a main branch could better serve the population of Lethbridge into the future, as well as how neighborhood branches could address the library service needs of the growing populations in West, South, and North Lethbridge. The previous facility needs assessment completed identified that LPL's staffing levels are in part dictated by its facilities, indicating a need for more in-depth facilities planning and direction in order to ensure sustainable growth of library services in relation to Lethbridge's population size. Additional strategy for investment into branch locations is necessary to support accessible library services in Lethbridge as our city grows. Furthermore, as library service trends continue to evolve, planned long-term investments in library spaces, technology, furniture, and equipment are key to good capital planning. The library requires a facilities master plan that will identify and prioritize investments in library facilities based on the need for equitable access to library branch services across the city. The plan will inform future capital budget planning, including capital needs for both building and digital infrastructure. If we could move to the next slide, please. Planning for a new or updated main branch could include increasing building and service capacity that meet library best practices for space in relation to population size, and could include increased space for popular materials and new collections, children's services, cultural spaces, technology, community meeting and performance spaces, and parking. It could also include a single access to the building to improve safety and security, improved flow and access to all spaces based on current accessibility standards, flexibility of spaces to ensure long-term viability in future service changes, and increased efficiency of staffing and building operational costs. Planning for future neighborhood or community branches should take into account the specific needs of the population and the services available in that community. Next slide, please. So the objectives of an updated facilities master plan are to articulate guiding principles that express LPL's strategic intent for long-term facility planning, define a model outlining facility types and parameters for LPL's future branches, provide a set of criteria to guide decision-making on the development of future branch locations, identify strategic priorities for investment in LPL facilities over the next 25 years, and outline the space requirements over the next 25 years. It is imperative that the Library Board have well-developed plans for long-term investment in library capital projects to allow them to plan accordingly for resource allocation, to take advantage of unexpected funding or capital improvement opportunities, and to provide ongoing direction for future service development, such as alternative service delivery options. And if we can move to the next slide, moving on to our second project, which is the Crossings Branch expansion and enhancement. Expansion of the Crossings Branch into the currently undeveloped space of 2,588 square feet will include expanding the children's area, an improved teen space, creation of a new public meeting room, additional public washrooms, expanded staff workspace, and a strategic redesign of the library to provide better access to washrooms and staff support, as well as additional furniture and collections. This project was partially approved in the last CIP cycle, with the HVAC portion of the project approved and completed, and the remainder of the project moved to the 10-year cycle. Since that time, the project has been reimagined slightly with a lower overall price tag and additional funding found to help offset the costs. The total cost of the project is estimated at $735,000. A net increase to operating costs is about $18,000 a year in its first full year of operations, which accounts for an increase in utilities, building insurance, building maintenance, and facilities life cycle. Next slide, please. So we have been able to secure some additional funding for this project through library capital life cycle reserves, as well as a gift from the Society of the Friends of Lethbridge Public Library in the amount of $100,000. This leaves about $480,000 needed to complete the project. Next slide, please. The Crossings Branch provides services to meet the needs of the growing population of West Lethbridge, who are geographically isolated from the rest of the city. West Lethbridge is now the largest population area in the city, with an average growth rate 3 or 4 times that of any other part of the city. And of the total population, nearly half of the city's youth live on the west side. The Crossings branch was built with a target population of 34,000 in West Lethbridge by the year 2031. Of course, the population of West Lethbridge has already far exceeded that, with a population of over 40,000 in 2019. The Crossings branch is free to use and open every day of the week, including evenings, and provides activities, resources, and space for Westside residents not available elsewhere. The expansion and enhancement of the Crossings branch into existing space is a cost-effective and expedient way to significantly improve library services for Lethbridge residents. Next slide, please. This project will include moving and expanding the children's area of the library, which is one of the most highly used spaces there. The new space will include a programming area and easy access to washroom facilities and staff support. The current size, layout, and use of the branch cause issues for the family-oriented population that use it. The children's area is currently too small to accommodate programming and its high volume of use. In addition, some families that visit experience accessibility issues to washroom and staff. Next slide, please. The project will also include an improved teen space, which will be slightly larger and in a more appropriate location within the library with teen-friendly amenities. Currently, the teen area is too closely situated to the children's area and doesn't provide any sound barrier to the rest of the library. Next slide, please. A new public meeting room will also be included in the design. It will have a separate entry door, which provides potential for use outside of regular library operating hours. Private study rooms and meeting spaces are in high demand throughout the city, but at the Crossings branch in particular, due to the high volume of student traffic during the day. Meeting rooms provide quiet study or group meeting space for visitors, and it can also provide another flexible programming space for library use. Next slide. And lastly, the project will include additional washroom facilities and a staff workspace, a redesign of the library interior to provide better access to washrooms and staff, and additional furniture and collections to meet the needs of the growing West Side population. Knowing the rapid population growth on the West Side, we want to plan for services that will meet the needs of that population going forward. The current undeveloped space that is there was built with the intention of future expansion in order to meet that growing population's needs. LPL is the resource library for the Chinook Arch Regional Library System, and the Crossings branch in particular is an easy access point for Colehurst and County of Lethbridge residents who can access library services through LPL. The project utilizes an existing facility, which is currently not used to capacity. The expansion doesn't require land consumption and utilizes existing infrastructure. Next slide, please. So, and that's my presentation for you. Myself and Craig are happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. I think do we have an echo? Does somebody have a microphone open? Okay. Okay, questions? Start with Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Spearman, and thanks for the presentation. Tara, thank you. Just was curious, the library it seems you've been really hammered by the pandemic this last year, and I just wondered, was there any silver lining from having to, and I hate to use the cliche, pivot to what you've been doing? Was there anything involved in that helps you to say, well, here's another way that we can go through, when we're planning our capital projects and expansions and things? Is there anything at all that you've discovered that you've learned or not?
We've definitely learned things. I'm not sure how much it impacts us in terms of facilities planning, because one of the things that we've learned, in fact, is that our spaces, our physical spaces, are really important to the community. And we hear that every time we close and then reopen, which has been 3 times now during the pandemic. And
counting.
Yeah, but who's counting? Yeah, so that's one of the things we've learned, is that the physical spaces are really important. Of course, we continue to provide services. We're continually coming up with alternative service delivery models, and that is part of the planning in terms of in cases where there isn't capital available to build new branches throughout the city, how might we provide services in a different way? And that's the idea of the master plan, is to include some of that planning in it when capital isn't available. We've learned that without access to the library and our computers, there is a major gap in the city for people accessing public computers and internet. So again, we've altered some of our service delivery to try and meet some of those needs for sure. But again, the library as space has been really highlighted as being important during all of this. We've had people tell us they've come and sat in our parking lot in their car reading a book because they miss being in the library so much. Obviously, you know, we're a major meeting space for the community, so that's definitely been highlighted for us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Spearman.
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Ms. Plato. Appreciate the presentation information. My questions were about the project, because mistakenly in my brain, I remembered us funding it 4 years ago. But you're right, we did only fund, I think it was $250,000 for the HVAC, if memory serves. So that has been installed in place, and time and budget, on time and budget.
Yes, that piece is complete, and the staff and customers who normally visit the crossings are very grateful because it's now livable in there in the summertime. It is complete, yes.
Great, thank you for that. And the operating costs for this extra square footage seems fairly minimal. I'm assuming it's mostly just utilities, extra electric, etc. Utilities, is that correct?
Yes, we're really just trying to account for the extra square footage and what that might cost exactly in terms of lighting and heating and that sort of thing. It does not include any additional operating costs beyond what it costs to operate the additional square footage in that building.
Okay, thank you for that. And are there any other costs involved, any staffing hours, et cetera, or is that all netted out by extra generated revenue by facility rentals, et cetera?
Yeah, we don't predict any additional staffing costs, because what it's really doing is actually allowing our staff to work a little bit more efficiently and better. Right now, you know, we're kind of crammed into some smaller spaces, and so it just allows for some better efficiencies for staff who are working there already. But mostly it is about providing bigger spaces for the public. Again, we don't actually have a children's programming area at that library. We do use a meeting room, but obviously there's conflict between meeting room use and programming. So the idea is to provide a dedicated programming space. A large part of the space would go towards that, as well as washroom facilities and the public meeting space.
Okay, thank you. And final question, if I can, Mayor Spearman, perhaps to Ms. Pinkson. Does doing an expansion like this tack on any extra capital maintenance? The name is falling out of my head. The dollars we put aside to continually upgrade and replace. Oh, yeah, and you're muted too.
Sorry, I was muted there. Councillor Carlson, life cycling of the assets.
Thank you. Would this add any costs to that?
I believe that's already included in there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you very much for the presentation. Your two projects certainly give a good overview of some of the difficulties that the library is facing. One of the questions I was wondering, and forgive me if I missed it during the presentation, if you did have the Crossings branch expansion, how many years do you think that would carry you through? So if you did that, are you looking at this is good for 10 years, 20 years? What are we looking at so we kind of get an overall cost for how many years we'd be providing a better service to the community?
It's an excellent question, which I don't have an excellent answer to, unfortunately. So the facilities strategic direction document that I referred to, that was done in 2005. It planned for a branch for the west side for a population base that was much smaller. And so what I would say is that we need to redo that to determine what the actual space needs are. But the point of this is that, again, the building is already there, the space is already there, and so it's a way for us to immediately, or in the very near future, improve library services for that population while we work on that future facilities planning, which will give us a bit of a better idea how we need to plan into the future based on new population growth estimates. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't have a number for you, but it's something that we would incorporate into that planning exercise going forward.
Yes, because as you can well imagine, the one thing nobody likes to see is we do this expansion and then, you know, West Side booms, and all of a sudden in 2 years we realize we spent money that we should have done differently. So if you don't have the answer now, of course, we're not deliberating this till May. If you could give us any sense of that, just so that, you know, we know this cost would have, if it's approved, would be useful for 5-10 years or whatever.
Sure, I can look into that some more for you. The other thing I would say is that generally when we're planning for library systems, the common way to plan is to have a central, usually downtown branch, and then smaller neighborhood branches. And the purpose of those neighborhood branches is to ensure that there are accessible library services in all parts of the city, because we know there's lots of people who have mobility issues. And so I would suggest that the Crossings branch for long-term planning may not be the only branch on the west side. And so I would suggest that as we see how the population grows, and again, I'm talking, 25 years down the road, that we would more likely plan for additional branches in communities versus that branch no longer being viable.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the improvements to the Crossings branch are making better use of existing space. Is that correct? There's no physical changes to the building. It's just better utilization of the existing spaces at the Crossings branch. Okay, thank you. And your ask is $480,000, and total project cost is $735,000. So. And your other ask is the $300,000 study. Okay. How's technology impacting library? I know it looks like you're making your efforts, the improvements at the downtown library and the proposed improvements at the Crossings branch make our libraries more inviting for people to physically attend. Is technology changing attendance at public libraries these days, and do you have to plan for that as well?
Yeah, the way I would characterize technology as impacting the use of library services is not, it impacts the services we provide and how we provide them versus a decrease or an increase necessarily. So of course you can access a lot of our materials online. That's something that we have invested more in the past year for sure, but we're already investing in before that, and luckily we had a really robust online platform and collection available already when we had to close our doors. So certainly people are accessing more things online, but what we find generally is that it doesn't tend to necessarily decrease physical use of the library. It's another way people are using the library. The other thing technology does is it impacts a lot of the services we can provide. So one of the things I mentioned as a possibility for a facilities plan is to include things like maker spaces that make a big use of technology in communities. So some libraries have where you can come in and you can, create and edit videos in the library, or they have music studios, or they have all sorts of other things that utilize technology. And so as technology grows and the use of it grows, the library's ability to provide it becomes more and more important, because again, it's about providing equitable access to technology and resources to everybody. Often the library is going to be the only place that you're able to access some of these new technologies. And so planning for proper bandwidth is incredibly important as part of the facilities planning to ensure that we can provide contemporary library services as the population grows. Again, many of the things people access through the library will be technology driven. So that is a big part of the planning that we need to do for facilities. I hope I answered your question. If I didn't quite get it, please let me know.
That's good. I'm just asking questions that I think might be of interest to the larger population. So the overall question is the library keeping pace with technology? And your answer is that we look at it all the time, and more resources are provided all the time, but it doesn't preclude physical use of the libraries either. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. Are there any further questions from council? I see none, so we'll move to the resolution. I'd like to thank Ms. Plato for her presentation. We have a resolution from Vice Chair Carlson. Lethbridge Public Library Capital Improvement Program projects. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentations from Lethbridge Public Library as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Unless there's any questions or comments from my colleagues, I'm still trying to figure out if that's a library behind Councillor Crowson.
It's the original library. Well, the Carnegie Library.
I thought it was. Anyways, without that, if there's nothing further, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, the question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? Okay, thank you. It's received as information unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to the Southern Alberta Art Gallery. And I'd like to invite Mark McMurray and Melissa Arseniak to come forward and present. Thank you.
Craig Burnout, Chair of the Public Library.
Is now exiting.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman and Council. As we know that spring has sprung, everyone would recognize that the SAG sits in a very unique location in the city, and it does create its unique operating challenges in that environment. The board feels very accountable to partner with the city in revitalizing this area of the downtown, and we are right in the middle of it. Arts do provide leadership in the community. As an example, this past year, the SAG was recognized as with an Indigenous name. It's the first gallery in Canada to receive that recognition. We're very engaged as a board. We know what we need, and what we need is your help to support the pivot of our organization for the community of Lethbridge. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Just to revisit the timeline here, as many of you are well aware, back in 2017, the gallery CIP was approved. That proposal largely revolved around a restaurant for a third-party operator. It also relied on additional funding from outside organizations. The CIP represented only half of the funds required. And again, it was contingent on approvals from 3 other organizations that did not come to pass. Now, since then, there's been a change of executive and board leadership and a change in scope. So what we're proposing today is dramatically different than what was proposed back in 2017. This time around, the all-new board has put forth a proposal addressing our immediate operational needs with a focus on financial sustainability moving into the future, as well as revitalizing the downtown. The structure is such that this project is contingent on the city's approval alone. It is not reliant on other funding sources of funding. The way the structure is set is such that the city provides the first step, that solid foundation, and we will be approaching outside funding sources to build upon that foundation. So that's kind of phase 2 and 3 and beyond. Next slide, please.
So maybe just to build off of Melissa's comments about having a strong foundation, our gallery continues to pursue a leading edge offering of programs and exhibits that get recognized both nationally and internationally. An important part of that is our ability to deliver both to our patrons and our staff a safe space to work in and a safe space to create in. Much of what we are asking for in terms of use of funds will be leveraging to capture needed revenue streams for our sustainability. It's one of the things that on our review over the past couple of years, we recognize that our facility has those limitations, and by putting in some additional infrastructure, it would allow us to achieve that one of those primary objectives, and that is to help drive revenue by being involved in programming and events at the SAG that can support our long-term sustainability.
We strongly feel that Galt Gardens can't be ignored any longer. We feel we're at a tipping point as an organization with that location, but also as a community. Members of the community are starting to avoid the downtown. These new habits are becoming entrenched, and if we don't change pace and change attitudes, it will be increasingly difficult or even impossible to change consumer behavior if it is allowed to continue and become entrenched. We want to engage with the park. We don't want to turn our back on it any longer. And while we realize this isn't a comprehensive solution, we think it is a good first step, and we would like to be part of the overall solution moving forward. We're willing to step up, and we're hoping that the city will help us take that first step. Also on this slide, you see we speak about our food services opportunity. This is not a restaurant. We are not interested in getting into the food service business. We are an art gallery. We are simply looking for a catering kitchen that will expand our ability to host events and dynamic programs, as well as Mark alluded to earlier, drive sustainable revenue in terms of event hosting for business meetings, luncheons, AGMs, cocktail receptions, weddings, and that sort of thing. As it is right now, we do not have that a practical ability, which significantly impacts our ability to drive event-based revenue. Also, I should note that the need for outdoor programming and event space is not a new idea. In fact, this has been discussed for decades, and it's been discussed for decades for a reason. It makes sense. So we're hoping that the city will support us as we try to bring this conversation to the next level and realize this vision finally.
Next slide, please. This provides a fairly high-level breakdown that we've been working with the City Capital Planning Department. This project, as Melissa said, is I'm going to call it shrink-wrapped. It includes all phases of the necessary requirements in design, furnishings, and construction. So our ask is a complete ask of $5.8 million. Next slide.
I'd just like to take the opportunity to remind everybody that the SAG's building is your building. It is a city facility. We operate on a fee-for-service agreement. And we want to ensure that this facility remains relevant into the future. It did benefit from a renovation in 2010. That addition certainly enhanced the facility, but much of the original structure, the Carnegie Library that we were just discussing in the background a moment ago, it turns 100 next year. And it is antiquated, so it presents its own challenges. In terms of the modernization, we're looking for modern gallery standards. We don't have a loading dock, for example. A loading dock is key. Right now, everything comes in through the front door off 3rd Avenue. That's not practical moving forward. As well as environmental controls such as humidity and safety protocols that need to be addressed. They're very pressing issues.
So taking a look at sort of the renovation and reconfiguration, the majority of the funding will be used for our interior spaces, with the exception to what's highlighted there as in the map as Area 5, and that is the area which is currently the parking lot for the SAG, which tucks in behind the building off of 3rd Avenue. We would be looking at relocating our gallery shop. We'd be looking at enhancing the visitor experience in the entrance and egress, and that would actually also not trap our staff in the corner where they currently reside in behind on the right-hand side of the building, for those of you that have come in. The food services and catering area would be relatively centralized and support both gallery spaces and public spaces in the center of the building on its 2 levels. And then lastly, looking at that area at the back where we can integrate with the park and have a much more, I'm going to say, approachable institution, both coming from the park and going from the building out into the park.
So this proposal really comes down to 3 things. First, critical operational needs. Second, providing opportunities for long-term sustainability and revenue generation. And third, facing the fact that Galt Gardens cannot be ignored any longer and needs to be embraced and enhanced. Again, I can't stress enough how I feel like we are at a tipping point and bold decisions have to be made. We're urging council to invest and reinvigorate rather than continue to turn our backs on the problem and let things deteriorate and fade away.
Next slide. Yeah, just get to if we get to just the very final slide. Thank you. One thing I'd like to do is acknowledge our volunteer board who have been operating the SAG since December. We had a change in our executive, the board made the decision to change our executive director out in December, and we've been actively recruiting for our next leader of the operation. We're very well advanced on that. We're very excited about our leading candidate, and we hope to be able to make that announcement here in a few weeks in front of us. It's still unfortunate that that candidate was not able, from a timing perspective, to be part of this process. She is aware, and we're quite excited about it. Also like to thank the city for their support as we've worked our way through the gymnastics of revitalizing our view to revitalization of the SAG. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you for your presentation. We'll now move to questions from City Council, starting with Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and I'd like to thank our guests for their presentation today. I have a question to City Manager or Designate. Does SAG fall under our Asset Rationalization Initiative?
Mayor Spearman, through to Councillor Miyashiro. The facility is our building, and so I would suggest that it does.
So that being said, when we're working through that whole process, and we identify buildings that need to be refurbished, that the infrastructure needs to be upgraded, does that fall on the occupant to upgrade that, or does that fall upon the city of Lethbridge? Do you know the answer to that?
Typically life cycling of the facilities, it really depends on the agreement with the fee-for-service or community group, but typically life cycling of the buildings would fall under the city.
So then, I guess follow up to that, then any organization that comes before Economic Standing Policy Committee regarding facility upgrades or facility refurbishment or infrastructure upgrades, that could possibly be on the city's dime anyway, regardless of what they're asking. Is that correct?
Councillor Miyashiro, I would suggest in this instance it's a bit more of an enhancement than just routine maintenance, but I don't necessarily know the specific details of what they're
Right. So if it's over and above versus something that's needing replacement due to wear and tear, two different things then. Great. Okay, thank you. Second question. I know I've had a chance to talk to Co-Chair Antoniuk about this at length, and it just needed to be said publicly anyway, is that Lethbridge City Council approved a capital plan and project for SAG in our last capital program, or maybe it was two programs ago, and SAG decided to change it. What that does, and it leaves a bad taste in all of our mouths, because we go through a long process in order to deliberate and to decide on which projects are going to be funded in the city of Lethbridge. What assurances can council get if we go through the process and the time and effort to analyze all the proposals, we give the SAG money? What assurances do we get that you're not going to come back within 6 months and try to change it like what happened last time?
Thank you so much for the question. First off, my co-chair and I, the entire board and the organization as it is now, share your frustration. It is very unfortunate that things transpired the way that they did. The initial ask was contingent on outside additional funds. The CIP represented only half of the required amount to break ground and move forward. And also the change of leadership at the board level, which has changed since, and the executive director, they didn't necessarily embrace that vision. In this instance, our proposal is all-inclusive. It doesn't rely on outside funding that may or may not come. And our board is very engaged and aligned and ready to move forward with this as is. We are not looking to change horses halfway through the race again. We have certainly learned from that experience, and we continue to learn. But what we're presenting here is, if you say go, we will proceed immediately. There's nothing else standing in the way. Does that answer your question?
Great, it does. Thank you very much for that answer.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you both for the presentation. Much appreciated. Quick one through you, Mayor Spearman, more of a request to Ms. Pinkson. The previous CIP, I don't have my hard copy anymore, and we amended that last year, I think it was, and so now it just reads as zeros in the online version. Can you send me the original, just so I can do some comparisons? I'd appreciate that. So that's just a request. Thank you to the presenters. Appreciate that. In the design, and I tried to compare it to the previous one, the building envelope of the expansion is still the same, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And so is the bulk of the dollars spent on the construction of that? Because I'm kind of thinking there may be priorities in your list of, sorry, I'm scrolling through the list of, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slide, renovate and reconfigure the spaces. Are there higher needs? I know in talking with past administration of the SAG, the highest need was the loading dock and storage space. And I always hate to do this to groups, but I'm always cognizant that sometimes we don't have all the funding groups need, but we can find some for necessary improvements. Was there any thought of building sort of an a la carte? I hate to call it that, but that if council could find the 2 million or the 3 million for this, we could actually have the loading dock and storage space. Was there any contemplation given to that, or is that any possibility, or is it an all or nothing?
Yeah, maybe if I could address that. When we engaged with city planning in the context of, I'm going to say, resetting our proposal, we were strongly encouraged to look at the iterations that were put forward, and there had been I'm going to say a more expansive renovation that at one point had been costed out, and then there was consideration for something that was materially pared back from what's presented. What we've presented addresses all of what I would call the core needs that existed 4 years ago, as well as those same needs that exist today. I would say that it would be difficult to continue to increment our way into the building, partly because of the, I'm going to say the circumstance of having to deal with an envelope which is materially 100 years old, and making any changes on that becomes quite problematic. We did have a conversation about perhaps running it in phases, and if we did run it in phases, the challenge there is that the sum of the parts would be greater than the whole that we've presented.
Okay, thank you for at least saying that you'd talked about it and considered it. Final question for now, Mr. Mayor, if I may. The $70,000 a year operating increase, is that an ask as well, or is that contemplated to be generated internally?
Thank you for the question. All of the budget is for this renovation was developed by Facility Services. We did not come to the city with dollars in mind, and I specifically asked Carrie Nightingale yesterday to provide some clarity regarding that $70,000. It's my understanding that that is for life cycle consideration, but she encouraged council, if they have any questions or need more granularity on any of the budget items, to reach out to her office, because they are the ones who developed those numbers for us.
Thank you. I trust the number. I'm just, so that is an ask as well. It's not just the capital cost.
I believe that is comprehensive. That's included in the CIP amount, the total amount. It's not an add-on, is my understanding, but perhaps Haley can speak to that.
Councillor Carlson, any item in that operating cost line is an additional, would be an additional pressure if the project was approved on the operating budget. So it's not included in the capital component of it. That would be specific to operating.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. I stand corrected.
And just because Haley's there, Haley, if this was approved, because this is now asking for total city funding, who chases those other grants? Is that up to the SAG, or if this was approved, we don't want to pay the whole shot. We'd always chase whatever grants are out there. Who would be in charge of making sure all avenues are pursued? Is that a city responsibility, or does that fall to the SAG completely?
Given that we would likely be the project managers of our Facility Services would support in terms of the project, I would think that that's certainly something that we could explore as a combined effort.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I took many questions. I apologize.
Thank you. Councillor Croson.
Yeah, that Carlson and Croson, sometimes I'm not sure which one it is.
This time it's Croson.
My first question is to the city manager, actually, about this building. This is a city property. We do have a 99-year-old historic building. one of only, if my facts are accurate, one of only 3 Carnegie libraries ever built in Alberta, even though I hate calling it a Carnegie library. It's the Lethbridge Public Library building originally. Have we ever looked at heritage designation with the province, which would open up grants to us?
Thanks, Councillor Crowson. I'm not aware of whether we have or not. I'm not sure if anybody else on this call would be aware of that.
Mr. Robin Harper?
My understanding is that a portion of that building has a heritage designation, which limits a little bit of what we can do to it and how. But Councillor Crowson, in response to your question, I believe there is a portion of that building that does have a designation already.
Could you forward me which designation? Because I can't think. It's certainly not. The only designations that would stop anything are provincial and municipal, and I can't think that this one has designation.
Yeah, I will look into that and forward anything we have for you.
Yeah, something I think we should consider at some point. Certainly those grants from the province aren't huge, and they are matching grants, of course, but it might be a possibility. Another question, thank you. Another question to the 2 members from the SAG. I apologize. I know you gave me a phone call the other day and I never got back to you, but I knew we'd be speaking here. Related to the changes you want, I understand the difficulty whenever a new board comes on because the vision may change from the past vision, etc. And yet, we are in a community that has a long history. And there was an expansion to this building in 2010. And one of the questions the public is going to ask, and question I would ask, is why weren't things like the loading dock and some of those things considered at that time? Do you have any idea why they weren't part of that expansion? Because yes, for a museum or an art gallery, etc., the loading dock is an essential piece. And I'm just wondering, people are going to ask us that question. Why wasn't it done then when the expansion was done?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. It's a very good question. Again, unfortunately, we weren't around back then, and we don't have those answers as much as we have asked ourselves the same question, frankly. I'd also just like to point out that, yes, we are a new board. However, I've been on the board for about 2 years, as has my co-chair, and we're not experiencing a period of significant turnover again. So hopefully we'll be here for years to come.
Yeah, no, I understand how difficult sometimes institutional memory is, though. It's very difficult to pass on. So we really don't know why it wasn't done then. But you're saying, again, coming from the museum world, this is absolutely essential, a loading dock, isn't it? I don't think people realize the back of work stuff in a museum or art gallery is as important as the front stuff.
We actually have limitations in terms of some of the exhibits that we can have come to the city because of the physical limitations of the building itself.
Okay, thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you for your presentation, and I certainly admire your commitment. I'm going to say this is an important building for the city of Lethbridge. I do have some questions. The 99-year-old building, soon to be 100-year-old building, is going to be reviewed for improvements and renovations, which almost always means that bringing up to code. Sometimes that reveals things like asbestos and other expensive things to get rid of and change. Has that all been factored into the request today?
It would be a good, a full answer would come from the city planning department, city service planning department, or projects department. We have incorporated in and at least discussed in the frame of the dollar amounts the fact that we are dealing with a 100-year-old building, and in the context of any changes that we'd be making to that building, code issues have been incorporated into the budget concept. As it relates to any potential hazardous materials, I would anticipate that most of those considerations would have also been similar to the 2010 renovation. And there may be some insights from that I would also have anticipated the projects group to have considered in the dollar amount. Quite frankly, the dollar amount exceeded our expectations when it was developed and presented to us back from the city. However, having just gone through a renovation of a home in the city myself, I do understand how some of those things can expand the cost base.
And usually
Good question.
they do try to build in contingencies. Engineers tend to be cautious at the city, so.
Yeah, it's my understanding.
Okay, good. Now, the original part of the building was 99 years old. We did improvements in 2010, but I know the gallery existed for several decades before. What's the age of that expansion, the original expansion part of the building?
The gallery opened in 1976. That was the grand opening.
Yep. Okay, so that would be, 24 and 21, 45 years, okay. And so this is really the first change in the footprint.
The 2010 renovation changed the footprint as well, as my understanding.
A little bit out the front and, and a bit out the back, okay.
And that east side.
Okay.
I just would like to stress that the ask now is to not expand the building into the park or expand our footprint. We would be using the existing parking lot for that expansion in square footage or space.
Okay, so improving the functionality of the group of the building. I'm not seeing a lot of extras being added into this. This is simply functional improvements for the most part. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a very, believe it or not, this is a very modest, pragmatic approach. We're addressing our immediate pressing needs here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the enhancement that would be recognized by the city from the exterior of the building would be on the north side of the building, where we're trying to integrate into the park proper. And we have contemplations of sculpture gardens and public art displays that would interact with the Galt Gardens as well as with the SAG on the east and north side of the building.
Okay, generally the SAG has punched above its weight in terms of its reputation and displays. You mentioned that with these enhancements, you would be able to consider additional displays. What types of additional displays would be coming to Lethbridge that our citizens would benefit from?
For the question, and I'll take part of it, and then I will let my co-chair bring it home for me. But just right off the top, there are certain exhibitions that will not allow you to bring the work in through the front door. It's a security issue. So a loading dock in and of itself will enhance our ability to bring in new and exciting and high-level exhibitions to the community. Also, the outdoor area is envisioned to be a dynamic event space that would expand our programming offerings. Public art is a big part of that, as my co-chair alluded to, the sculpture garden and other public art. But it expands our offerings across the board and provides new and diversified entry points. So we're not just presenting high-level contemporary art to a small part of the population. We're looking to engage the community on multiple levels and provide programs and exhibitions and services for the entire community at multiple levels.
Yeah, in terms of actual limitations, clearly with contemporary art, often things show up with different media and different materials and different scale, and you know, we've brought dirt into the SAG through the front door of the SAG in order to put on something that's relatively contemporary, and those are things that we do physically to get around the limitations that we have. We have limitations on things that we can't hang in the building because the structure isn't sufficiently robust to hold the weight of some of those things. We have temperature and humidity control issues, which for some national and international exhibits, it just puts a big X across our ability to even engage those traveling displays into our facility. So those are the types of things that if we were to make those remedies, we would be adding a level of diversity and quality into the offerings for the community.
What you're really asking us to do is fund these improvements so that you can be a modern art gallery, up to modern standards, not just for a building, but for an art gallery.
For
Is
a
that
gallery.
correct?
We are, that is our primary mandate, is to be a gallery. Our secondary mandate is to be a sustainable gallery. It should be actually our primary mandate. We need these changes in order for us to be relevant in the space that we occupy in the city.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from council? No? Okay. Anything our administrative staff would like to add, City Manager or Mr. Harper?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Spearman. I just wanted to offer a little bit of clarity on Councillor Miyashiro's comment a little bit earlier about the change in scope of the project. From our understanding, the project that was approved in the previous CIP was canceled. So he's correct in the fact that this has changed, the scope has changed, but the previous project was entirely canceled with instructions to bring forth another ask in this CIP process. So just a little more clarity on that. And Councillor Crowson, I did get some further information on the heritage designation. It is not designated at this time. It is designation ready. And we did not want to put any designations in place prior to a possible major renovation, which would have limited our ability in some areas to make changes.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for those additional clarifications. If there's no further questions from council, I'll thank the presenters and we will deal with the resolution. Thank you. I have a resolution from Councillor Carlson. Southern Alberta Art Gallery Capital Improvement Plan Proposal. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receives the report and presentation from SAG as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you, Ms. Pinkson. I received the update from the capital budget, so thank you for that. Unless there's anything further from my colleagues, I'll call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? There are none. Thank you. I'm now going to invite Mr. Klaus Whitke, President, Lethbridge Pickleball Club, and Isla Wong, Director, Lethbridge Pickleball Club, to present to us on the Lethbridge Pickleball Club's public submission. I think Mr. Wong was online. Is Mr. Whitke available also?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Okay, please proceed.
We have a video presentation for Mayor and Council, and it will be up shortly. Of the Lethbridge Pickleball Club, or LPC. I have lived in Lethbridge for 70 years and have been a realtor in the city for over 20 years. Since 2018, my family and I have seen pickleball as an opportunity to be active, meet new people, and compete in an emerging, fun, and lively sport. This presentation will provide you with a brief overview of the Lethbridge Pickleball Club's 2021 Capital Improvement Program application for funding. The Lethbridge Pickleball Club is one of 23 Alberta clubs affiliated with Pickleball Alberta and Pickleball Canada, the national sports organization, or NSO, for pickleball in Canada. The LPC became a non-profit society in 2017, and our current board consists of a number of longtime residents of Lethbridge who each hold a wide array of business, sport, and community service positions. Our current club membership includes a combination of recreational and competitive players, including national and international tournament championships. Let me introduce you to the sport of pickleball.
Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. It was invented by three dads on Bainbridge Island back in 1965. It's a combination of tennis, ping pong, and badminton. It's played on a badminton-sized court with a net about 2 inches shorter than a tennis net. You play it with a paddle a little bit bigger than a ping pong paddle and a little more durable wiffle ball. Most racket sports require hours and hours of lessons, but with pickleball, you can walk onto a court, pick up a paddle, and within 5 minutes of learning how to play, you can be playing a competitive game with your friend.
As the fastest growing sport throughout the US and Canada combined, pickleball came to Lethbridge in 2008 through the efforts of Jim Wood, who also became a member of the board of Pickleball Canada when it was founded in 2009. It is estimated that Canada currently has well over 80,000 pickleball players of all ages, and Alberta has the highest number of registered players with at least 4,300 players across the 23 affiliated clubs. In the Lethbridge area, there are close to 400 registered players amongst the LPC, the Lethbridge Senior Centres, and Coaldale Pickleball. More and more players are choosing pickleball because it is an easy-to-learn, fast-paced sport that is physically and mentally engaging. Research has proven that pickleball provides a cardiovascular benefit, improves physical strength and power, and promotes social and psychological benefits that lead to lifelong participation in the sport. Currently, Southern Alberta has 10 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts, 6 in Lethbridge and 4 in Coaldale. The 6 in Lethbridge courts are in the Legacy Regional Park, and while the courts are a great location for recreational drop-in play, the lack of wind protection and number of designated courts limit the potential for the facility. In addition, the Lethbridge Pickleball Club does not have an agreement with the city for scheduled play. Because the average pickleball weighs less than 250 grams, it is virtually impossible to play on unprotected courts with winds that gust in excess of 20 kilometers per hour. Locally, the only wind-protected courts are in Coaldale. In addition, the minimum number of designated courts necessary for tournament play is 8, and all provincial and national tournaments require 12 designated courts. With 6 courts in Legacy, there's no opportunity for Lethbridge to host outdoor pickleball tournaments. Finally, the LPC does not have an agreement with the city for scheduled play at Legacy Park. This means we cannot schedule designated times for recreational play, lessons, and skills clinics, referee training, or league play. This thwarts the ability to recruit new players of all age demographics, reduces LPC opportunities for outreach, and essentially stunts the sports growth in Lethbridge. As a result, last summer, a number of LPC registered players made the trip to Coaldale, and we expect a greater exodus in 2021. The Lethbridge Pickleball Club is proposing a capital project to build 12 regulation wind-protected courts in the northwest corner of Galt Gardens. The 12-court project would see 8 courts fully operated by the LPC under the formal club structure and scheduling parameters, while the remaining 4 courts would be available for public access at all times. We intend to work with organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, school groups, and the Rotary Club to promote the use of these public access courts. The LPC-run portion of the facility would be fenced separately from the 4 public access courts and include washroom facilities, storage areas, and a shady viewing area for spectators. The Galt Gardens Pickleball facility has a total proposed budget of $1.3 million, with $100,000 related to planning and consultation. Approximately $1.2 million is earmarked for construction and another $20,000 for furnishings and equipment. Operating costs of the facility will be minimal and estimated to be approximately $10,000 per year. These costs will be covered by the annual LPC membership fees. There are currently 3 grant opportunities that the Lethbridge Pickleball Club will pursue to assist the building of the Galt Gardens Pickleball facility. The Government of Canada's Canada Healthy Communities Initiative that aims to transform public spaces in response to COVID-19. As an outdoor sport that is socially distanced, we believe courts and Galt Gardens would be well suited to receive funding under the Safe and Vibrant Public Spaces theme. In addition, the Government of Alberta's Community Facility Enhancement Program, Small Funding Stream, and the Co-op Community Spaces Fund recreational category are 2 other potential grants that the Galt Gardens proposal would qualify under. The Lethbridge Pickleball Club intends to meet future deadlines for all 3 granting agencies. With the addition of a dedicated pickleball court facility in Lethbridge, the LPC could become a center for excellence for pickleball in Southern Alberta. A facility of this nature would see a significant increase in memberships, recreational play, and visitors to Lethbridge. To provide a context, in the first year the Coaldale Pickleball Court facility was open, each day more than 160 pickleball players were traveling from all parts of Southern Alberta to play on their 4 courts. The Golf Gardens Master Plan includes a section for program sport play activity. A 12-court pickleball facility would meet that vision and would aid in bringing positive activity to the park during the warmer months of the year. The northwest corner of the park is currently underutilized, and the taller buildings and mature trees on the west side of the park provide a natural windbreak and shade that are conducive to pickleball. With lots of parking and businesses in the area, each pickleball tournament would bring upwards of 300 to 400 participants and their families to the downtown area for a weekend event. The Golf Gardens Pickleball Facility supports a number of goals of the City of Lethbridge strategic plan by fostering people, places for all, which is goal number 5, through livable communities, goal number 3, that will allow for economic prosperity, goal number 2, in the downtown core and beyond. The Golf Gardens Pickleball Facility includes support from 3 key organizations in Lethbridge. Given the documented importance of golf gardens, the support of the Lethbridge Historical Society reflects the role that the park continues to play in the lives of residents. In fact, as noted in the Lethbridge Sports Council support letter, the park was donated by a sport enthusiast and continued to hold many sporting events in its earlier years. Returning a portion of golf gardens to this intended purpose would bring vibrancy and energy to the park itself. As a central location in the city, the support of the downtown BRZ suggests that the Golf Gardens Pickleball Facility is the type of investment that would promote positive outdoor physical activity that brings people to the core of the city. Pickleball is growing faster than any other sport across all age groups for all skill levels. Investing CIP money in the Golf Gardens Pickleball Facility will make for a healthier population and a more vibrant downtown core that brings a new energy to the city of Lethbridge. The Lethbridge Pickleball Clubs hope you will invest in the Golf Gardens Pickleball Facility. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We'll now move to questions from council. Start with Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Whitkey, for your presentation, for your club's initiative in pushing this forward. I have a number of questions, Mayor Spearman, so cut me off when you wish to.
Thank you.
First thing, I'm wondering if Mr. Hawkins or Mr. Dalton can answer this question. We have a brand new 6 courts in Legacy Ridge, or Legacy Park, I'm sorry. And if what Mr. Whitkey said is accurate, the city has not entertained working with the Pickleball Association on any kind of usage agreement or any kind of way for them to book the space, a public space owned by the city of Lethbridge, and we're shutting them out. Is that correct?
Can I answer that question, Councillor Miyashiro?
I'd like an answer for sure. Whoever can answer it.
I can answer that because we have been in consultation with the city for probably 6 months to get an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding for those pickleball courts. We have finally been successful thanks to Robin Harper, and the MOU is coming. It is right now in with the city. I believe it's in the city solicitor's hands right now, just covering the what we need to cover the city's portion of legalities. But we have a verbal in place with Robin Harper right now to cover the MOU for Legacy Courts. And it has taken quite a while, but we were able to finally dot our I's, cross our T's, and cross all the hurdles that needed to be done to accomplish that.
Okay, great. That's great. But yet, rather than even take that a step further and say, hey, let's see, can we partner on developing this new pickleball facility so it's more playable? But instead, let's just build a brand new court in downtown Lethbridge. It's going to cost $1 million versus seeing how we can make one that's existing work. I'm just at a loss of I'm disconnected somewhere. Someone tell me why we couldn't make for less money, make more courts, make them more playable, because we have washrooms there, there's parking. So someone help me out. I'm just at a loss here.
I can offer a comment on a portion of that, Councillor Miyashiro. Dave Ellis and I in Parks are actually currently working together to look at a windscreen addition to the Legacy Park courts to mitigate the effect of the wind out there. Right. In regards to any conversations about expanding and adding existing courts. I think it's been mentioned briefly, high level, but nothing further has come of that.
Okay, it just, money's tight, and it just makes more sense that we leverage the facilities we have already, rather than build brand new ones, because to the rest of it sounds like that groups can't get together and come up with a common vision for what that facility should be. I understand maybe better than anyone in council what the interest in pickleball is. The organization that I run, the biggest request we have is for more gym space for pickleball, and I know it's something that's going to keep growing, and it's not going to diminish in interest. I don't even know where we go from here, Mr. Harper or Mr. Dalton. It's just that we have a brand new park on the north side. We have some ability to perhaps grow a section of that to be home for the Pickleball Association or players even, if we can work it out rather than building a brand new facility from scratch. So I don't know if someone can answer that question or if that's just me navel gazing.
Perhaps you could leave that with us, Councillor Miyashiro, and we could take a look at that, because I don't think, as Mr. Harper said, that any real work has taken place on that. So if you could leave that with us.
Okay. And furthermore, if anyone from the town of Coaldale is watching this, I'm sure there's going to be a sign pretty soon saying, if you don't live in Coaldale, we'll come and use our pickleball court. So.
Okay. We'll move along to Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Trying to look at the more optimistic side of things, kind of progressed in the downtown where Galt Gardens is, certainly would create a lot of viability in the downtown. My question is, you did say that there would be a lot of parking. I wonder about that. Is that, how can you guarantee a lot of parking, especially if there's an ability to create a national championship? So is that, how can you address that, for one?
There's several, to Councillor, there's lots of parking right across the street in the mall that could be used if it was, and especially if we had a national event, we would naturally go to the mall and ask them for permission to use some parking on the Sears side there that is right now empty. There's a whole parking lot there now that's not being used whatsoever, which is kind of kitty corner to the space that we have been asking for.
The other thing I was going to ask, is there, for pickleball, is there a need for dressing rooms much, or a facility for dressing rooms, or not necessary?
Dressing rooms are not necessary.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Spearman.
Thank you. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Witzke and Ms. Wong, for the information, for the presentation. I'm just wondering, maybe to follow up on Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, to either of our guests here, is his suggestion feasible in terms of doing upgrades and expansion to the existing court? Is that something that would be feasible in your mind?
I'll let Ilse answer that because she has lots of experience in what needs to really be needed in national type courts. So Ilse has experience at the national level, and she can tell you what's needed on a national type court so that we can hold national tournaments.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I guess the first priority would be the number of courts. And right now that's a bit of a concern with only 6 courts. Obviously, I believe there's at least 1 tennis court at Legacy as well. So what room there would be for expansion to allow us to host a national-based tournament, which again, we'd need 12. Even for a provincial tournament, we'd need 8. So we could do a couple things, obviously, for a provincial tournament in the interim, where we could paint lines on the tennis courts, rent the tennis courts, and there would be certainly an opportunity to use that facility. It wouldn't hold mustards, I should say, for a national-based tournament. We'd need to have more pickleball-only courts. That's one of the requirements that they do have. Probably a bigger concern which is part of the reason why we were directed towards Galt Gardens, is the wind. And we all know Lethbridge is windy, and it makes it very challenging for us to organize many events. So we're very interested to try the MOU that we have going now, because a bigger concern will be how many of those actually scheduled time slots will we potentially have to cancel because the wind is too significant. Today, I believe the wind's going to probably peak at about 30 kilometers an hour. That is pretty significant when you're talking about trying to move a wiffle ball through the air outside. So I think there's two concerns with the current location. One are the number of courts, and second of all is how windy it actually will be. Even with windscreens, I might add, it can still get pretty gusty at Legacy because there's absolutely no protection. And I know they've talked about, in our conversations with Dave Ellis, he's mentioned that trees are planned to be installed on the west border until or unless very mature trees get built. There's going to be a significant amount of wind that's affecting those courts.
Also, can I add also the plexi paved surface?
True. Yeah, the surface is. Oh,
I lost your sound, Ms. Wong.
Sorry about that.
Nope.
The surface is a bit of a concern. With the cement surface, it's certainly hard on the joints. It's also not regulation in terms of the ball bounce and how the ball will react to the stones and everything else that are on the surface. So in terms of the potential to use that north side facility, like any facility, it would require probably some type of resurfacing for tournament play, I should add.
So other than required resurfacing for regulation, surface, windbreak, and more courts, it's perfect.
Yes, perfect, yes.
Super, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Okay, Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you very much for the presentation. And you're right. It seems like the last, well, especially in these last about 3 years, as Councilor Shiro indicated, there's been multitude of calls when it comes regarding pickleball. And I thought myself, honestly, it was going to be a sport would come up and it kind of does its ebbs and tides, right? But it absolutely hasn't been. It has been growing dramatically, and I know, especially with our seniors in the community, and it is, I mean, not that it's just a senior sport, of course, because there's many others that obviously play pickleball as well. Question I have is going back to a slide that was posted regarding some funding, federal funding, provincial funding, etc. That was shown. I don't know if that could be pulled up. If not, no big deal. I just wanted to ask the question: if we were to use somehow, work on, as Councillor Mayor Shiro and Robin had mentioned regarding the legacy facility, if there's some of this funding could actually be used to vamp that up, make that better. If it's more mature trees are planted or whatever, maybe that's something that we could do as well. Utilize some of that funding that is there, and still be able to end up with a court that is, or some courts that are available and would be more standardized to what is required. So that's just a question I have. Could we use some of this funding out there, some of the grants, and to go towards this? And I guess I'd be open to about anyone thinks in or. Okay, I see here popping up, so yeah, thanks.
Mayor Spearman through to Councillor Hagan. It's certainly something that we could explore. I think it kind of falls in line with Mr. Dalton's comment earlier about just looking into kind of what those issues are faced at the park or Legacy Park, and then just kind of come up with an overall plan.
Thank you, because I know when we were first looking at the Legacy Park and what was the amenities that were going to go over there, I know pickleball even at that time was at the table, and so I guess I'm somewhat taken back that we have these concerns now, and that maybe some of these voices weren't heard earlier. And understanding funding, and it may be different as far as making it more multi-use, but this would be great to see if we could use some of that funding for to be able to enhance that. So thank you, appreciate the answer.
Okay. The proposal is Galt Gardens, and I just wonder, were any other locations considered besides Galt Gardens, or why Galt Gardens, and why not any of the other parks where there's a large area and parking?
This was the proposal that was sent to us by the city, and it was brought to us by the downtown BRZ, and it was an initiative of theirs that they thought this would enhance Galt Gardens, and that we could enhance the facility. And the reason that the park would be going back to what its original intent was, which was for sport. So that was the reason that proposal was put for, or the reason the proposal was put forth that way. But the pickleball club is more than willing to look at any facility. There were several other areas that were mentioned, but we had to make a decision. And because of the support of the Downtown BRZ and the Sports Council and also the Historical Society, we thought that was a great marriage of all three. But we, as a pickleball club, we just want courts. We want more courts. 6 courts are not enough. We need a dedicated facility that has 12 courts. So that's why the proposal was put forward.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation. That's helpful. Yeah. Are there any more questions from council? Okay, I see none. Is Vice Chair Carlson still with us?
No, Mayor Spearman, he had to leave to go to another meeting.
Yeah, he told me that he would. I just wanted to know if he had left yet. So because you volunteered, I'll have you sponsor this motion. So moved by Councillor Miyashiro, Lethbridge Pickle Club's public submission. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation from the Lethbridge Pickleball Club as information. Councillor Miyashiro.
Councillor Kaufman has his hand up.
Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'm certain that the city manager has captured this, but there was certainly an awful lot of question around the existing site, enhancement of the existing site. So I don't know how staff will be prepared for CIP when we arrive at that conversation, if there will be an awareness of other interests, perhaps, maybe looking at allocating the money, but looking at other opportunities or options. So it's just, I think it's more of a heads up than anything about that type of questioning may come in for CIP. I don't know if Ms. Pinkson wants to address that.
I would just recommend, Councillor Kaufman, that we put together some information, and it'll be presented the week of budget deliberations, the information that we can at least gather at that point.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Yes.
Could I answer? Could I
Go
just
ahead.
add one? Can I just add one more thing before the vote is taken? I just would like to thank Robin Harper and Dave Ellis for working with us diligently. We are now in the process of getting windscreens at Legacy with the help of the Lethbridge Pickleball Club. We have entered into an agreement to work with the city on getting windscreens for Legacy, which will, in the interim, really help the situation. And if the city decides, it would be excellent if we could upgrade the surface there as well. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It sounds like there's a couple of asks, one to upgrade the service there and this downtown facility, and council has requested additional information for further upgrades at the Legacy Park facility. So thank you. Councillor Miyashiro, if you could proceed with the motion.
Certainly, if there's no other questions or debate from my colleagues, I'll call the question.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank
Okay, we'll now move on to the next presentation, which is from École La Vérendrye, the gym expansion. So, Stephen or Stéphane Delouf, is this an electronic presentation?
Actually, it would be a Microsoft Team presentation with slides that will be provided that will be changed by your technician.
Okay, so we will have a presentation.
So bonjour à tous. You can put slide number 1 to start with. I'll do the introduction and we can go along with the number of slides. So I'd like to thank you, Mayor Spearman and Member of Council, for giving us the opportunity to present today. I think it's really important that we acknowledge the fact that we had the help of Mr. Harper as well in the background to help us with this process, and we truly appreciate that. We also want to let you know that we really appreciate the forum that was put by the City of Lethbridge online, as it has given us the opportunity to answer a lot of questions and educate the citizen of Lethbridge, because a lot of questions that were asked just showed that we're not as well known as we should be in Lethbridge, and they were fair questions, so we truly appreciate that. So my name is Stéphane Delouf. I'm the Executive Director of Operation for Franco Sud, and I represent the school board that has 14 schools. We have almost 3,600 students, and we have 14 schools in 10 areas. So it's really important that we show that we're quite spread. We are from Airdrie all the way down to Lethbridge and Medicine Hat all the way to Canmore. So we have a huge area as a school board. We're part of a public school board. We have public school and Catholic school. So why are we here today? Like we're here today to work with the City of Lethbridge and to ask for 20% of the funding of a project that we're working on that would be about $2.3 million. So we're here to ask the funding in order to expand the gymnasium that we have currently at l'École La Vérendrye. L'École La Vérendrye, for the people that I'm not sure, it used to be called Alan Watson Schools, and it's downtown. So we can go to the next slide. We can go to slide number 3, please. I'll keep talking and we can move the slide as you want to go along. So what we have is l'École La Vérendrye. We have a K-12 school that has 411 students. The current gym size at École La Vérendrye is 264 square meter. When we look at the smallest gym that Alberta Infrastructure will give nowadays, it's 430 square meter. And we're asking to put an extension that will bring the gymnasium to 595 square meter. And we would add 60 square meter to the gym storage room. We're on slide number 4, by the way. So what we're doing here is for the reference, I will show you later on how how we are working here, and what we have is you'll see on a graphic like how small the gym is compared to what it should be. Okay, so the initial concept was to expand the existing facility towards the west, and that involved extending the existing building to the existing outdoor field. We have plenty of field available, as you already know, because it's been rented by the city for soccer and other things. So we had consulted with a firm in Lethbridge, FWBA. There's an architect firm that is in Lethbridge, and we asked them to give us design. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So it's the project description, slide number 5. So what we're looking at is expand the footprint of the gym itself by 375 square meter, expand the gym storage room by 24 square meter, add a weight room that's non-existing, that's 57 square meter, add total new space that will be 432 square meter, and the new gym size will be 696 square meter, which is quite an improvement of the existing gym right now. Okay, so when we look, is like, what are the advantages for the community for this? We're talking about the benefits will be a recreational, social, educational, instructional, and it would also help with early childhood. Like, we're talking about every level of the community of Lethbridge. When we talk about the gym, when we look at the plan that's right now in front of you, that's the slide before that. What we have right now was an addition that was primarily concept drawing. And if you can see, there's a mezzanine that will be put on the second floor as well, and a weight room there. So they will be able to have spectator, where right now there's no room for having anybody. It would be unsafe actually to have spectator in that gym for activities. If you look at the slide that's presenting right now, you can see on the shaded area, this is the actual size of the gym. So you can see by adding the 331 meter to the gym right now, what you would have is a gym that's functional, where you could be able to rent to the community. At this time, the city of Lethbridge will not use the gym at École La Vérendrye because of the size, and it also would probably be unsafe to have like basketball or volleyball because of the size of the gym. If we go to the next slide, you could see that when we talk about that gym, what it would bring is you will bring a full court volleyball. If you can have 2 half court volleyball, and you can also have 4 badminton court. And listening to the previous presentation, what I could see is that the badminton court will probably be highly used by the pickleball league, as they are regular size for pickleball, and they will be indoor. So when they're not using the field outside, when it's windy, they can always rent and use it during the winter season for a pickleball league. So we're here for the financials and implementation. So we're talking about a total project cost that will be $2,387,000, and that's in 2022 dollars. When we first initiate the demand, what we had was a $2.2 million total, and we were asking the city for an amount of $500,000. So at this point, what we're looking at is 500,000. That represents 20% of the project. We are working with the federal and the provincial to, like, they have some grant that we will be applying, and we're also looking at private grant with the United Farmer of Alberta and also the cooperative, which is a branch of that. Also, what we are doing is Franco Sud will be putting an amount of between $300,000 and $500,000 towards the project. So what we're looking at is like a balance of that would be covered by other level of government. If the funding is approved by the City of Lethbridge, Alberta Education, and also by the federal government, which is Heritage Canada, we would suggest that a committee with all stakeholders be put in place to hire the leading consultant for this project. And we would prefer a Lethbridge architect firm to coordinate the design and the construction upgrade of this project. If we're looking, I have included in the presentation, you have all the financials. These were done last fall, so they're pretty accurate. We understand that there's been some increase in material since, but with the help of Mr. Harper, we were able to update to make it at 2.2 million, where it was 2.2 before that. So when we did the proposal, I think it was really important for us to see if the proposal was something that aligned with your municipal development plan, if it's something that aligned with the Lethbridge Community Sports Council plan. And we were really glad to see that there is a need for more gym space in the south side. There's a need for more space in general for other activities. A lot of people, when they think of gym, they think volleyball, basketball, but I do believe, and we have proven it in many of our schools, that the gym is also a place where you can have group and other activities that are not always sports. You can have things that can be like church, they could be theater, they can be a bunch of things. And we thought it's really important that based on the community meets the needs of everyone, that in order to foster like a healthy and diverse city, it's important to recognize that the minority forms the community. It's part of the community, that this project is part of the Francophile community plan. By having these type of infrastructure, we will accommodate and ensure that the school can offer great program, active living, well-being, and professional development program to the population during and after school. We also make sure that the facility enrich the community by promoting and encouraging active living in a safe and secure environment. And also, like, it's not in the presentation, but I do believe that it's important to understand that the school is attached to the community center. And by having a gym that's conform to regulation, we also have a auditorium that offers 250 seats. And what it brings is you can have a place where you can have activities where the gym can be used, auditorium can be used, and the classroom can be used. So in the summer, it brings you the opportunity to have camps. It could be a drama camp, it could be a sport camp, and all those facilities are all in one spot, and it promotes more than what we have in the municipal development plan, because we are targeting multiple level of the population. We think that these projects will serve the community of the city of Lethbridge and provide continuous improvement. The fact that we're adding more space for active living program and service does support Council's strategic goal, making the city of Lethbridge a better livable community. We're saying that the great community adapts and evolves over time. We believe that the expansion of La Vérendrye Gymnasium will provide infrastructure that is current and up to date. It provides surrounding communities with a great space to be utilized and helps the community stay vibrant and prosperous over the long term. And we have to remember that we're close to downtown, and there's a few other things that we don't have in the presentation, but I think it's important to realize that the school has been part of the community for 25 years. We know that they've been a persevering community. When they first started, they had 5 students at that school. You have 250 students now. When we think of the stuff they've been they're associated with the Upper Vic Association, the Neighborhood Days. They've been part of the U of L Science Fair. They're part of the Lethbridge Sustainable Living Association. They've worked with the Ellen Schuler Nature Center, and the École La Vérendrye has received prize by the mayor, and they have received a green certificate for their service to the community. So it's not just out of the blue, like we come in here, we say we need money. I think there's more to this. We're really proud to be part of this community. And when I say we, I'm talking on behalf of Marco Bergeron, that's our trustees there. I'm talking on behalf of Sandrine Corona and all the staff that works at the school, and also the parents and the students of École La Vérendrye, because they really feel they are part of the community. I think that's how we come in here is to make sure that it's not just we need money and it's for us. Is like, can you please join us to bring the gym to a fair size so the whole community can benefit from it. And at this time, I think I'm pretty much done the presentation. If you have any questions or comment, please feel free to ask.
Okay, questions from council. We'll start with Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you. Bonjour, merci for the presentation. That's about my extent of French. I do have 2 daughters that graduated from in the French immersion program, but unfortunately it didn't rub off well enough on me. It made it difficult to actually help them with their school projects, but I'm sure glad they went through that program. I do have a question about the joint use agreement. I'd heard that currently the city does not use much of in the way of the joint use school agreement. Is that because at this time there hasn't been an injection from the city as far as to use that? Is that correct?
No, I would say that the joint use agreement, like because of the size of the gym, like you are using the surface outside, like the green space for soccer and other activities, but the size of the gym would make it unsafe to have a regular, it's not big enough to have a regular like volleyball court, or it's not big enough to have like, so if you want to have a badminton night and you only have 2 courts, is it really worth it to have the gym included in this? But it's always available for rental, but not for those kind of activities.
Okay, because I'd heard that it was a little too small, and yet a little bit later in the presentation is my understanding that it could be used for multiple other things. It could be for a gathering of a small art gathering or whatever, another event to go on there. So is that something that could currently be done, or is just not done at the time?
It's something that could be currently done. I think right now also with the MGA, with what's coming is that the joint use agreement and the joint planning agreement are being reviewed and will need to be reviewed as part of a mandate that's been given by Alberta. So that's something that I think that will need to be revisited and make sure that everything is done in order to make sure that every member of the community can benefit from the joint use agreement.
Thank you. And my last question, if I could, Mayor Spearman, is you talked about some of the funding and the $500,000 from the city. And just to understand it correctly, you've applied for other grants through other levels of government as well. Would those grants offset the request from the city if you're successful with them?
If let's say we hit jackpot and every grant that we applied for is being given to us, I would say that there would be probably a return to the city of Lethbridge for other components.
Okay, thank you. And possibly, I guess my last comment would be maybe we could make this into a pickleball court. I'm just kidding. That's
well,
good.
Mia Shiro was quite right about this. Is there's 4 pickleball waiting to be built in that building if we get the extension happening.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Bienvenue.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Good one, Blaine. Yeah, a couple questions. Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Lou, for your presentation today. I think to City Manager Designate, can you answer the question around joint use and around are we using the schools to capacity in terms of demand?
I can respond to that, Councillor Miyashiro. We continue to work with the school districts and the individual schools to try to maximize the usage of the spaces and the gyms. Obviously, the process we have in place right now and our ability to access as much as we need is not there. As mentioned in multiple other times, there is a there is a need for more space, more court space, gym space in the community, and it's something we've heard consistently for the last couple of years, and it was reiterated again in our master plan engagement. Can we improve and enhance the usage of our existing joint use? Absolutely, we can, and we'll continue to do that. But I guess in summary, my response would be we can always use more space.
In the last decade, there's been several schools that we've contributed. We as the city have contributed extra dollars to upsize the gyms. Are those gyms being used to our satisfaction for community groups? Because that was the reason we gave the extra dollars. Is that correct?
Yeah, the intent was to allow an increase in the size of the space to maximize the types of activities that could be held in there. So we have been able to hold programming in those spaces that would not have normally we would have been able to have in there.
Okay. And sorry, and again, we still need extra space, though, is what you're saying.
That's what we've been hearing from the community and the organizations, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the dollar amount that Mr. DeLoof's talking about for the size of the facility, would you say that's similar to other funding that we've given for other school other gym upgrades?
I will actually, my understanding is that it's less than we normally contribute, but I would defer to Ms. Pinkson to possibly comment on that.
Okay.
Councillor Michaud, can you just repeat your question? Sorry.
Right. So over the last how many decade, we've given dollars to school construction to upgrade the size of the gymnasiums so that we could use it as part of our joint use agreement. And the question was, is the dollars that Mr. DeLoof is asking in line or similar for the size of the facility to dollars that we've given to other projects?
I'm not sure I can compare the size for you from the other gyms that we've built, but typically the funding that we've allocated or council's approved is about $850,000, and I believe this is approximately 500.
500. Okay.
The ask is for.
Great. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I did have some questions. Just to clarify, would this come under the joint use agreement if we funded the $500,000 as requested?
I would assume that when the gym becomes regulatory, that it would be just the next step to make sure that Franco Sud is part of the GUA, yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. That's usually the rationale for the city funding the upgrades for all their public and Catholic schools in the city, is that those facilities become part of the joint use agreement. I think in return for that, and perhaps Mr. Harper or somebody can correct me, but when the community accesses a gymnasium outside of school hours, the school system provides any operating costs associated with that. For example, providing caretaker staff to open and lock the buildings. Is that correct?
Based on the GUA that we have in other area in southern Alberta, it's exact. What usually happens is that the city will take care of the rental itself, and a certain percentage goes to the city and a certain percentage goes to the school district to cover the cost of janitorial usage, these kind of thing. And in some of the cities, like equipment is provided, like if they have volleyball, there will be volleyball nets, they will have badminton nets, all that equipment is provided for the sports itself. So depending on the arrangement, but those are pretty standards in pretty much every cities, and it's easy to navigate around them.
Hey, Mr. Harper, can you confirm that?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, how we do it here is that we will take the booking, we will charge a rental fee, and then rental fee is turned over to the school divisions to offset the costs of the staff, just as Mr. Duluth has mentioned. And then for any life cycling of programming equipment like nets, posts, balls, etc.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that sounds good. Are there any further questions from council?
Mayor Spearman, Councillor Kaufman.
Councillor Kaufman, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm curious about something, and it's in the math. If we were actually to look back at D17 in the last CIP, we were contributing $850,000 to 2 different schools to just increase the school size gymnasium in construction by 200 square meters. This is a renovation expansion by 432 square meters for $500,000, $1.2 million in total. The math seems to be a little bit off, or am I missing something? Is it less? Does it take fewer dollars to actually do an expansion from an existing versus a greenfield build? I'm just wanting to make sure that funding is what it's being proposed to be.
If I can answer this question, what happened is when the gym was initially built, there was a fund, like they didn't have enough fund to build it to the size that they wanted. So what they did is they had a gym that is ready to be open, to be expanded. So we're talking about, it was like built in for a future injection that would make it expandable. So we're saving a lot of costs by having it planned that way.
Excellent. Okay, that's brilliant planning. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Spearman.
Good. Okay, I see no further questions. I'll ask Deputy Mayor Higgin to move this École La Vérendrye gym expansion. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation from the École La Vérendrye community as information. Acting Mayor Higgin.
Thank you. Quick question. Sorry to interrupt before we go to. I was wondering, listening to the information here and the $850,000. If we cannot reach our goal to make it happen at the 2.3 million, 2.35, will it be possible if there's a small lack of fund that we can raise our demand, or we keep it at 500,000?
At this point, it would go forward to the CIP as 500,000. I would encourage you to, I'm not sure if what the next step is. We're looking at the proposal as presented at this stage. Recognizing our funds are extremely limited, and I think it would be challenging for council and precedent setting if we were to accept increases to proposals in the next 3 weeks.
Totally understand. Thank you for the answer.
Okay.
And thank you very much for the presentation, the questions and debate. I learned a lot more about construction and further building for this gymnasium. So thank you very much. And with that, if there's no further comments, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There's none. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you, City Councilors. We truly appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, next we have submission and okay, from Councillor Kaufman. Community Section D, CIP 2022 to 2031 projects, day 3 of 4. Be it resolved that the Economic Standing Policy Committee receive the report as information. It's the report from City Treasurer Haley Pinkson. Yep. Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Yes, to our city treasurer and of course all the staff in finance, thank you very much for the work that you're doing on this, and to everybody who participated today, especially you, Mr. Harper, with all of the gymnastics you had to do in order to respond to various and diverse information. Thank you for that as well. We do appreciate you bringing matters to our attention. So thank you everybody for the work that's been presented this far. And with that, if there's nothing further, I'll call the question.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Thank you. There were no confidential items today. We didn't have an closed session meeting, so we'll move right to adjournment. From Councillor Parker, adjournment that we do now adjourn the meeting of the Economic Standing Policy Committee until Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. Councillor Parker.
I have nothing to add. I just want to thank everyone for their presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll call the question.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.